talk about Air India this evening. Now, we know technically, officially, the formal announcement has not been made yet. The DPM secretary made that very clear, saying that media reports that suggest that the formal announcement is done and the process is over are incorrect. Although now there are multiple sources and news reports indicating that the Tatas are indeed in the lead. Now, ET now has learned that the secretary panel has made recommendations in favour of the highest bidder, and sources tell your channel that the Tatas bid came in and across approximately 10 to 15,000 crores and will also assume 23,000 crores of debt. However, the final announcement will only come after the Air India Special Alternate Mechanism panel gives its nod, which could happen in the next few days. In fact, the handover to the Tatas from Air India, we understand, could be as early as October 15th. The complete process will also be on a fast track mode. Now, of course, we need to wait for the particulars, the details, what the pricing is officially and what the official versions are. But pretty much clear right now, the picture is that the Tatas are in the lead. They are in pole position. And if that does go through, it will be a sweet homecoming for the Tatas. Remember, Air India was started by JRD Tata nearly 70 years ago and will be back in the stable. It also raises questions about how the Tatas will manage Air India. They already have quite a few interests in aviation. There's the tie-up with Singapore Airlines, there's Air Vistara, which is their own airline, and the Maharaja comes with its own set of challenges. So today on the show, Jitendra Bhargava, former ED Air India, with us. Kapil Kaul, CEO of CAPA Advisory, joining us, as is Ajay Awtaney, founder of livefromalounge.com. Welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for speaking with us today. Mr. Bhargava, let me go to you first. This is, I would say, a story that you've been tracking for the last several years. You've written a book about it as well. We are near the finishing line right now. Is this the kind of conclusion you would have hoped for Air India?
Absolutely, except that had it happened 3-4 years earlier, it would have been much better. But better late than never, as they say. I am an absolutely delighted person today because I can foresee Air India now getting on to the northward trajectory, not either being static or going down. So with this kind of development taking place, I'm very, very optimistic, though I admit that it's going to be a formidable task for the Tatas, but they know it, what they are going in for. That's why when they bid for it, they put in the financial bids, they've done the due diligence through 12 multiple committees. So they know exactly where and what they are wanting or what Air India would need. I have often maintained, and I've said it in my book as well, Air India is not as good as it ought to have been, but is also not as bad an airline as made out to be. And when you look at the real statistics, you find whether it's the on-time performance or it is the occupancy factor, Air India lags the best in the country, about 8-10 percentage points. Now, this could be attributed to a government work culture, work practices, inefficiencies which stem out of government ownership. Then, of course, the leadership that we have had, and we all know, look at the number of chief executives that Air India has had. Since 2003, it's only been bureaucrats. Lack of professional management. If you have a vacancy, you do not try and get a person from outside, but try and promote the people from within. Now, all these kind of things, and as I've said in my book, attitude does not matter, aptitude does not matter, competence does not matter. What matters is the length of service. Now, you really can't be having a management team where the heads of the department are not leaders to boost the morale of the employees and deliver. So with one stroke of disinvestment, private management, and they would provide all these things, and the negatives that we see on the surface will disappear.
You know, Kapil Kaul, when this deal finally does go through, it would seem on the face of it to anyone who's not tracked the whole process of disinvestment of Air India as the natural conclusion. If the Tatas do eventually bag it, that the Tatas go back to owning Air India, it goes into their hands, the brand name stays, and so on and so forth. But behind the story are years of attempts to actually get Air India off the block. Take us through some of that journey, and why do you think this has been possible now?
Yes, so good evening. First of all, I've been repeating since morning that this is a historic decision. It will have a positive impact on the entire sector, and it's going to structurally re-rate the sector in terms of its competitive dynamics. So, positive move, a historic move. It will do two things. It will just make sure that Air India has a future, a very strong future, with a strong group, which can capitalize the company and give it a direction that business needs. But it simultaneously does for the government. It saves them almost $1 billion plus every year, and it will actually they're handing over the airline to a stronger group, which will ensure that the indirect benefits to the economy, to tourism, to trade are very, very significantly enhanced. So it's a win-win for the government. As far as the attempts are concerned, I think we must keep in mind that it was almost in 2000, in the first NDA regime in the 2000s, that the Air India deal was almost signed, and then subsequently it was aborted. So Air India's, Tata's interest to acquire Air India has been even before 2000 when they wanted to, in 2000 when they wanted to acquire Air India. Then subsequently, prior to this bid, which was announced in 2021, the 2020 didn't go through as far as what was required to be done. Because if you don't divest 100%, nobody is going to come on board. So I think in 2020 this could have been done better. But this time the government in 2021 has demonstrated highest level of strategic clarity and determination to exit Air India, and I treat this as very positive. I like to, as I said earlier, I like to congratulate the government because it's a very historic move. They've had the courage and the determination to go through it to the end. And to the Ministry in Air India for doing this deal quietly and efficiently. Again, I may reiterate that why I say it's historic, why I say it needs to be congratulated, because for bureaucrats to sign a deal like Air India where the government is taking a lot of haircut is a very bold decision. And frankly, all of them would take this decision in national interest. So everybody must appreciate with a sense of urgency and determination that the government has actually made sure that this deal leads a logical conclusion. So I think it's a historic decision, and frankly, it's Air India, it's aviation. We shouldn't just restrict this decision and the signaling it does just about Air India. It's a big reform decision that the government can carry big and bold decisions, and possibly it may signal much more deeper structural reforms to come. So I treat this as very positive, and as I said, congratulations to the government and ministry for ensuring that this is done.
Sure. So you're right. It does signal, and when it goes through, I keep caveating this because there is a statement from the DPAM secretary today saying that it's not through yet. So for when it goes through, definitely it will be one taken after quite a few healthy doses of reality checks for the government as well. Several governments have tried to put Air India on the block, and this government as well had to go back and forth, realize that they have to sell 100% of it, they have to hive off the debt, they can't hope to have conditions which will not be attractive to any investor, and they've come now to that conclusion, and we're at the finishing line. Ajay, tell us what the key challenges will be in your view, even from a positioning point of view, because Air India has had faced quite a bit of flack over the years as private carriers came in, zoomed ahead, were known for better service, better pricing, more dependability in terms of on-time performance, etc. Air India sort of slipped behind. So the Tatas or the new owners, whoever they are, will have quite a task on their hand, won't they?
Yes, indeed. Thank you for having me back on this show, Tamanna. So from where I stand, I see 2 or 3 key challenges, and there are some opportunities as well. Let's go about the opportunity first. So along with the brand name of Air India, you're getting a wide body. You're basically getting an international fleet and an international slot bank, which has been put to use for years and years. So you have slots at all prime airports around the globe, such as New York, London, Dubai, Singapore, Tokyo, so on and so forth. So that is an opportunity. The challenges, there are two or three key challenges, I feel. First is that you already mentioned this, Tatas already have other interests in aviation now. So I would like to believe that at some point of time there will be an integration effort between Vistara, AirAsia India, by whatever name it will be called then, and Air India. So Air India is not just one airline being acquired. There are two airlines being acquired. Air India and Air India Express is being acquired. So if Tatas get through the finish line, now they have this challenging task of merging these three entities together and creating an optimum route network and an optimum fleet choice. And most on top of the list, where is the brain bank of this entity going to be? Now, so far, if you noticed, this is something that's been bothering me since morning. The Tatas have outsourced the management of their aviation entities. So AirAsia was managed by somebody appointed by AirAsia initially. Vistara is headed by people from Singapore Airlines on deputation. Where is the brain trust of this entity going to be? We don't know about that. And there will be a lot of hard calls that will need to be taken, in the first few years. As I think Kapil and Mr. Jitendra both agree, there will be a lot of hard calls that will need to be taken. Initially, everything has already been undergone through a microscope, I guess, with the due diligence teams. But the time for action will start after the due diligence, after the takeover is completed. Second, the brand is there, but will the brand experience change? I have frequently flown Air India, and what I tend to notice is a broken passenger experience on the ground and a broken passenger experience in the air. I mean, the seats are literally broken. So obviously, the Tata Group needs to spend a lot of money repairing or perhaps adding a new, removing these aircraft and bringing new aircraft altogether, which could be a multi-year process. It's not like you just go pick up an aircraft just like you pick up a car. I know cars are getting delayed these days, but aircraft, you have to wait in queue. So we need to see, these are the two key challenges. And then the third, there will be a lot of IT challenges as well, because I believe all these entities are running different systems. You will need to merge all the IT systems. You will need to merge all the frequent flyer programs, a lot of things, a lot of work to do before we get this one behemoth, which we hope will take on the other, blue behemoth in India for aviation. So lots to look out for.
So it's a gargantuan task, no doubt, but if anyone was up for it, one would argue that the Tata Group is best positioned. Jitendra Bhargava, Ajay spoke about some tough decisions. Will there be tough decisions when it comes to employees? One of the big question marks about acquiring Air India all throughout this journey has been what to do with the many employees of Air India. Will you be able to downsize them? The very vocal employee unions, and some of those problems have been taken care of. The government has made some promises, but do you think that there is going to be a challenge on this front as well?
Mana, what is unfortunately happening is that people still go by what was relevant 20 years ago, that Air India has the largest number of employees per aircraft, when the fleet size of Air India was just about 1920 at that time. Now, this thing must go, this impression. Now, let's look at what the number of employees, when 14,000 employees as government came out in the expression of interest. You've got about 3,000 plus pilots. Now, what is there to expect as far as the productivity of pilots are concerned? There could be some tinkering required as far as the work practices are concerned, but by and large, they are as efficient as pilots of any other airline. Now come to the aircraft maintenance engineers. They are about 4,000 in number that we are talking in now. Now, that they have also been branched up to a separate subsidiary, so the numbers have gone down. Now you're bound to need aircraft maintenance engineers for maintaining a fleet of 100 plus aircraft. Air India plus the Vistara and this thing, you're talking about something 150 plus aircraft. Now, what do you do with these circumstances? Then there are the other people, the ground handling. Ground handling, again, I would admit in their case, the way that we have gone about it is because at one time we were a dominant player in the market, commanding 85% market share. But when the policies got changed, etc., Air India is also being served by Air India's subsidiary and SATs, for example, in most of the airports. Now, when you look at the number of people and the number of employees who retire every year is huge. And Air India for the last many years has not recruited general staff, category staff, barring the pilots, the engineers, and the cabin crew. Now, cabin crew, etc., one can always say, okay, they need to adjust to the private sector culture, which is re-engineering the work practices. I don't think it's an Herculean task. Now, they have to get on because people will admit. It is not that the Air India employees will say, look, we are as good as anybody else. The fact is, once reality is made known to them and said, this is what is it. This is the work practice that we have in the private sector, whether it is any airline in the country or British Airways or Singapore Airlines, and this is what we would like you to do it. Toughness will be required. Let me explain to you. What we have witnessed in Air India is that the chief executive has buckled down far too often under the pressure of the unions and given in, even if the department had wanted it. But what is a matter of concern to me is the senior management. You need to have a professional management. Unfortunate part, as I said earlier, when you keep promoting people on the basis of length of service, you don't produce leaders. They don't get the employees to give their best because their vision is also limited. So there it is the Tatas who will have to inject fresh management people and say, this is where the leadership will come in. Then, of course, as I think Ajay hinted at, then you have the basic, big, huge balance in the salary structure. Because in the government sector, the difference between the salary of the lowest staff, as I wrote in my book also, that the senior management people get far less than their counterparts in private airlines, but junior people get far more than their counterpart in the private airlines. So some kind of tinkering will have to be done, but I'm sure Tatas know about it. They will go about it, and it is not an insurmountable challenge. They will do it and they will achieve it.
Well, it doesn't seem like an insurmountable challenge today, and let me tell you, I have covered this process
just one
for
point.
years
You see, there
now.
was a time
Never
when the
before
unions
was
were...
it seeming as doable as it is this evening. Yes.
No, Tamanna, I was just saying, there was a time, say 5-10 years ago,
Yes.
when the unions were averse to the idea of disinvestment. They were hopeful that the government will keep paying them money and they'll keep getting their salaries credited to the bank accounts. Realization has dawned on a large number of people after the statement made by Hardeep Puri, the previous civil aviation minister, that the course is either to disinvest or to shut down the airline. So once you have a clear threat to your job, I'm confident that most people will give in and agree. I've read statements of the various trade unions, not linked to the airline, making a simple categorical statement which was expected of them that they will oppose the disinvestment. They will say that you are selling family silver, you're going to crony capitalism, selling it cheap, etc., etc. All these things are. But Modi government must go about it. And I will reserve my congratulations for the political class for a later day and not rush into it and say the bureaucrats deserve congratulations, like Kapil has said, because I don't think bureaucrats have played a role. It's the determination, the political class that has taken Air India's disinvestment thus far.
All right, so there is a long challenge up ahead as far as Air India is concerned and the Tatas takeover is concerned, but we're near the finishing line. Let's wait and see how this goes. We're waiting for that formal announcement. Thank you to all of you for joining us on this discussion. But before we move on, just a look when we're talking about the Tatas near the finishing line, how deeply invested they are in the aviation business and why Air India holds a special place in the heart for them. Take a look at this report by my colleagues Dimple Sharma and Cheryl D'Souza.
Looks like life is set to come a full circle for one of India's most valuable business houses, the Tata Group. Sources say the Tata Group may have emerged as the winning bidder for national carrier Air India. But did you know that Tata's love affair with the skies is as historic as the company itself? It all started with J.R.D. Tata, the group chairman before Ratan Tata, who became India's first qualified pilot in 1929. Did you know that J.R.D. Tata got his pilot's A license in India, and that too in the shortest number of hours? J.R.D. founded the Tata Air Services in the year 1932 with an investment of 2 lakh rupees from Tata Sons. In 1938, the company was rechristened to Tata Airlines with initial operations from Bombay to Trivandrum, Delhi and Colombo. In 1946, after the World War II, Tata Airlines went public and became a joint stock company. And that's when it got its name, Air India. It was after independence that the government acquired 49% stake in the airline and by 1953 took control of the airline from Tata Sons, making it India's first state-run aviation company. Even after this, the group did not lose sight of Air India. Ratan Tata, a trained pilot himself and also once the chairman of Air India, sought to buy the airline in the year 2000 in alliance with Singapore Airlines, but later aborted their plans. But the group's tryst with aviation did not end there. In 2013, a year after India liberalized their foreign direct investment in aviation, Tatas returned. Almost 60 years after his first airline was nationalized, but this time in joint ventures with international carriers. First, with Air Asia Berhad, they started Air Asia India, headquartered in Bengaluru, and in 2015, Vistara, a joint venture between Tata Sons and Singapore Airlines. 6 years after re-entering the market with 2 joint ventures, Tata Sons was dominating the newsroom discussions once again for its likely interest in Jet Airways. Ultimately, a consortium of investors led by Murari Lal Jalan and Calrock Capital won the bid to revive Naresh Goyal's beleaguered airline, Jet Airways. Cut to 2021. Tatas emerge as the front-runners amongst the bidders, making an attempt to get into the cockpit of the national carrier Air India once again. With a whopping 1 lakh crore rupees worth of debt and losses staring at its new owner, Tata's taking over Air India will put an end to a decades-long struggle of various governments to offload the stake in the bleeding national carrier. With Dimple Sharma, Cheryl D'Souza, ET Now.